Up there. I'm going to read it as soon as I'm done.
All right.
Yeah.
No suing rough trade.
Andy, I'm sorry. That's all I need is somebody to call me.
Well, welcome everyone. You obviously know what you're here for, which is to meet this man here and hear about his life. Seymour Stein from Sire, the writer of this book, which I'm sure you can buy here, and you should. I've read it, I love it. Daniel Miller from Mute, and I'm Martin from Beggars. And we're going to have a bit of a conversation, and after that you can ask questions. Daniel.
First of all, Seymour, it's great to be here at Rough Trade.
Oh, I love rough trade.
And,
I don't need the stall, please.
Is there the best English label?
yeah.
I used to go to the original store all the time because, you know, I would collect antiques, and I would go Portobello Road on a Saturday, finish up as quick as I could, and head right over to see Jeff Travis and everybody. I met you in rough trade. I believe. I'm pretty sure, but I know for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
I remember.
40 years ago.
Yes,
roughly.
absolutely. 40 years ago.
Yeah. And what I remember is that you, if I remember correctly, you used to fly in from New York, and you used to go straight to the Rough Trade shop to check out, and you used to speak to Judith, who was working behind the counter, to see what was going on, see what was new.
It was the hub. I mean, you know, you would think that after the success of British artists like the Beatles and the Rolling Stones and the Kinks and the Who and what, you would think people would be paying more attention to British bands, but they weren't. And you know, fortunately for me, and so I think I was quite lucky.
Why do you think that was? I mean, for our point, it was a label trying to get releases in America. There was only you that got it.
Yeah.
Everyone else we went to talk to, but nobody got it.
You were the only one who understood what was going on.
Was I the only one? I find that, you know, but no, because I would always, look, the indies in America were my idols, my teachers. My book is really dedicated to a man named Syd Nathan King Records in Cincinnati, Ohio, who taught me so much. I learned so much from Ahmet Ertegun and his brother Nesui, and also from Jerry Wexler at Atlantic Records. And there were many other labels that the Chess Brothers in Chicago, and also in Chicago was one of the early, you know, black-owned labels, African-American owned labels, VJ Records, which actually at one time had the Beatles and the Four Seasons under contract. You know, why? Because Capitol Records turned the Beatles down not once but twice. Can you believe that? You know, but true. Sorry, I'm rambling a little bit.
No, that's good. So
You wanted to ramble.
I mean,
And my name isn't Jack Elliott, so I'm not allowed to ramble.
and Sire has been in existence since late 60s?
67,
Yeah.
late 66, we started as a production company with Richard Goddard, an extremely talented, still my best friend, you know, producer. He was an artist. He had his own band, the Strangeloves. He produced the McCoys, Hang On Sloopy. He wrote My Boyfriend's Back and produced that by the Angels, and countless other things. A very, very talented man.
And I'm quite interested. And of course, you were partners in the incredible Blue Horizon label.
Well, yes. I met Mike Vernon on a trip over to Decca were our distributors, Sire's first distributors. I met Mike Vernon, and I was so impressed with him. And you know, he told me he was starting this label, Blue Horizon, and you know, Fleetwood Mac was called Peter Green's Fleetwood Mac. he produced David Bowie's first album under his original name, you know, David Jones, and he could. In those days, producers could produce anything. Mike Vernon could produce an orchestra. I mean, and the next day, be working with Fleetwood Mac, or as it was in those days, John Mayall's Blues Breakers. So he started the label, and he called me up for advice and everything, and I gave him as much advice. Look, I maybe knew more than him, but I didn't know. You know, Sire was, only a couple of years old, and we were struggling. And then he asked me to become his partner. And I said, Mike, you just had a #1 album with Fleetwood Mac, and you've got a top 10 album with Chicken Shack. I can't afford to buy into your company. He said, look, Seymour, I'll make it very easy. I can't stand the business end of the business. He said, I want you to run the business for me. Not that I was such a great businessman, I've made a lot of mistakes along the way too. But he was a purist. He just wanted to make records, and boy, he was a great producer. And I'm sure he still is, but he's retired. He grows olives and lives in Spain and is very happy.
Yes, those are early Fleetwood Mac, the Peter Green's iteration of Fleetwood, was amazing. So, and from there, you kind of got into more like the psychedelic scene and the bit of progressive rock with Focus. And like that.
I think that Focus was a little before that, actually. What happened was, my greatest mentor was this gentleman, Syd Nathan, King Records in Cincinnati. And he would always have me out while I was in high school. I was still in high school for the summers to stay with his family so he could teach me the business. And this man, L.G. Wood, I don't know if any of you remember L.G. Wood. He was the chairman of EMI Records, and what a gentleman he was. And he said, Sid is so behind you. He said, I know you're going to start your own company. I didn't know it. He said, when you do, and when you come to England, I want you to see me. So when I came, he had me met by John Reed. It was here in where are you, John? It's him. And so I couldn't, he was about, how old are you, 17? How old? 17, yeah. So I said, is there a car to take me to see Mr. Wood? He said, a car? How can I drive? I couldn't understand what he was, I couldn't understand one word he was saying. He was from, that area of Glasgow where I think they have their own language. So it took me, and Len Wood put out a whole bunch of records in front of me, and he said, these are all available, and one by one I would sign them, whether it was the Climax Blues Band or Renaissance or Barclay James Harvest. They were so keen on Barclay James Harvest, they named the Harvest label after that band, and I liked them very, very much, but Climax and Renaissance did a lot better. And then I was putting out so many EMI records on Sire that all their companies from all over Europe and all over the world were sending me music. And then I get this record by this guy, Jan Akkerman, from Holland, and I loved it, and what I particularly liked was one track. The whole thing was, but he did a great instrumental version of Ode to Billy Joe, and I loved it. And so I called up this guy at the, in Holland. I said, look, I don't pay big advances, but can I license this record from you? He said, you can have this record for nothing. He said, he just left the label. He went back to his old band, Focus. So I said, really, Focus? I said, where can I find out about Focus? And he said, they're the band that's playing for the Dutch production of Hair. I flew right over, I met them, I signed them, and a year early, around that same time, I was working with Mike, and I hope I'm not going all over the place. I mean, I hope I'm not boring you. But anyway, so around the same time as that, Mike Vernon says to me, Seymour, I want you to come to the Windsor Pop and Jazz Festival with me and see some bands, I said, oh, I'd love to. So I was sitting on one side with Mike, and on the other side, his engineer, a fellow that I'm sure you all know. He later went on to produce records by Elton John, Gus Dudgeon. So I'm sitting with them, and this band come on, and I went nuts. I thought they were so fantastic. So I'm looking in the program, and I see they're managed by Chris Wright and Terry Ellis. Now, they had no label then, and Mike was producing 10 years after in Savoy Brown, 2 bands that he was involved with. I couldn't wait till they finished, as much as I liked them. I said, Mike, this band is great. I said, you should sign them for Blue Horizon. He said, oh, Seymour, I could never work with a flautist. Now, I didn't know what a flautist was. I thought it was something, a degenerate. I had no idea, because we called them flute players. I had no idea what he was talking about. So then, but that was all right. Mike was wonderful. Then I turned to Gus Dudgeon, and I said, Gus, you'll be the engineer. He said, Seymour. He said, you don't play him. I mean, I was being so insulted here. He said, Seymour, you don't play a musical instrument, do you? I said, what does that have to do with anything? He said, if you played a musical instrument, you would have heard all the bad notes this band hit. What do you want to be involved with? Anyway, the band was, I'm talking so much, but what? Jethro Tull. So, all right. So I pushed and I pushed and I pushed to get Mike to sign it. Finally, when I gave up on him, I wrote to Chris and Terry. I have a letter back from them. Said, it's not just Mike Vernon. Everybody's turned down this band, so we've decided to start our own label called Chrysalis. I treasure that letter. So, and then I don't know. How did I get on this all? I'm sorry, I don't mean to go on and on, but fire away, guys. I'm sorry.
So how did that turn into punk? How did it go from there to punk?
How did I didn't
in about 2 years.
I didn't go from there to punk. I mean, rhythm and blues, that's a category. Country and western, that's a category. Jazz, that's a category. Classical, that's a category. Punk isn't a category. I mean, look, there's good music and there's bad music. If it's good, how good is it? That's all I care about, And I didn't go into punk. I mean, thanks to Danny Fields and my wife, although I wanted to see them on my own, but I came home from England. Sometimes I would come home from England really sick. I really worked hard, and I have no regrets. And that was one of the occasions I couldn't go see them. They came back raving. So the next day, I booked the studio for an hour, a rehearsal studio, and they played for about 20 minutes or 22 minutes, and they must have did 18 songs in 22 minutes, and I fell in love with them, and the first song they did was Blitzkrieg Bop, which, I didn't, Blitzkrieg, nice Jewish boy. So, but the more they played, the more, I loved them, and I did a deal with them right on the spot. They were in the studio within a week, and that's it. Look, I don't believe in punk, when they started calling Talking Heads punk, I said, are you out of your minds? Or Television, who I never signed, but I would have liked to. I have a great deal of respect for that band. But I said, punk. I said, please, this is just great music, and that's when I came up, with, I didn't invent the term, it's been, film and plays and all that, the word new wave. And, you know, I mean, and there's always new waves. New waves doesn't describe the music. It's a new wave. And there was actually a new wave because New York had been this, I hope I'm not going on too long, but New York had been the center of the music business in America for many years. You did have Capitol Records out on the West Coast. This is, you know, Warner Brothers were just a small startup then, and you had another great label, Liberty Records out on that, and a few little labels. You had Chess and VJ in Chicago. You had companies dotted all around the South. New Orleans, one of the greatest music cities in the world. And, you know, but this has all taken away, the Beatles and England, all that had taken away from New York's dominance, you know. And so I said, this is a new wave that's hitting New York. And that's how I classified it.
What do you think it was that made it? What do you think it was that made it be born in New York with the Ramones and Talking Heads and all those others? Why did it start in New York?
Why did
those artists you signed that group?
Why did they start in New York?
Oh,
well, I think a lot of it had to do with a man called Hilly Crystal, who I greatly admire. He had this club called CBGB's, which, if you don't know what it stood for the music that he liked: country, bluegrass, and blues. I never saw a country or a bluegrass or a blues band there. He just kept it open to everybody. What a gentleman he was, you know. And you know, and I think that attracted a lot of people. There were other Max's Kansas City. There were other clubs that was sprouting out, but none of them as important, at least to me and what I did, as CBGB's.
Did you feel at the time that the music you called New Wave was going to really change the whole of the music
No, I felt Talking Heads was going to. No, that was just the name because I was so offended by punk. Yeah. You know, I'm sorry. You know, I hope. You know, but I mean, you know, the Ramones were a great band. But we call them whatever you want. They were a great band. Richard Hell and the Voidoids, the Dead Boys, all of them, you know. But don't label. Just whether you like their music or whatever it is, or you don't like it, whatever. But you know.
Well, yeah. I mean, I remember when I first heard the Ramones on John Peel.
Yes.
It was kind of a life-changing experience for me, and I was waiting. For the guitar, I said, please don't play guitar solo, don't play guitar solo.
Oh.
And they didn't play guitar solo. I thought, okay, that's it. This is something really fresh and new. And they had a huge impact on the UK and on
John Peel had a tremendous effect on me. I remember, you know, Rob Dickens' brother, you know, whose son manages Adele, he wanted me to go see the Searchers, because he believed in them, even though this was years after. I'm driving down to see them, and I hear this record come on, John Peel show, Teenage Kicks All Through the Night, you know, and I went crazy. And then he kept, you know, John Peel, who's fabulous, played it over and over again. I said to Paul McNally, I hope he's here, I don't think he's here, but I wish he was, my assistant, I said, pull over, I gotta find out more about this band. And, you know, and it was the Undertones, and no, John Peel, I mean, just, you know, I don't think there's been anybody like him since. They're great people, but John Peel was so influential.
Oh, absolutely, yes. Definitely.
I hope I'm not wandering off the subject.
No. So how did you, let's talk a bit more about, you discovered the Rough Trade Shop, I guess, at a certain point, or you stumbled across the Rough Trade Shop.
Well,
the original one in Kensington Park
yes,
Road.
I found it very early. Yeah. I think somebody had mentioned it to me. So I said, you know, you go to Portobello every Saturday. Why don't you check out the Rough Trade store? And I did. And it's fabulous. There were those 3 people in it, you know, 1 woman and 2 guys. And what knowledge these guys had. They were like walking encyclopedias.
And you came there to discover new music, to try and find new things.
Oh yes, of course. And I would spend hours there after I bought some little, bits and pieces on Portobello Road. Yeah.
And that was kind of your way into that kind of post-punk with, well, I hate that term as well, the period in just after 77, 78.
Yes.
That's where the kind of...
That's where I heard I Melt With You, and is that, what am I saying that right?
Yeah, modern English.
What?
Modern English.
Modern English.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
modern English. So, I signed that with you and Ivo, and and then the Cult, well, I couldn't believe, the Cult was so obvious, I couldn't believe it, how did I get away with that one?
Well, there was competition on that one, but we chose you.
Oh, you chose. I hope you don't regret it.
No, do they. And the Smiths, do you want to talk about them?
Well, I'd rather talk about Depeche Mode first,
Yes,
because there's a
do.
kind of a similarity, not similarity, but he was putting out his own records under made up names and everything. I thought he is a genius. I still think he's a genius. And I woke up one morning and there's a small little piece there, Daniel Miller signs real band, Depeche Mode, and then I looked and I was horrified. They were playing that night, but it was 6 o'clock in the morning. I called up, I said, look, I called British Airways. I said, how much is it for the Concorde? They said, $8,000. I said, oh my God. But I was betting on him. So I took the flight, and Paul McNally met me at the airport and drove me up to Basildon, and I was totally blown away. Now, fast forward about a little bit over a year later, I get a call from Jeff Travis. This is like a triumvirate, the three of the greatest music men there ever were. So Jeff Travis called me, he said, oh, Seymour, and he was like this, he really was like this. I'm not lying. He said, oh, Seymour, I've just seen this band, and they're so wonderful. I can't get over it. He said, the one thing I'll tell you, as much as I love them, you're going to love them even more. I said, well, tell me about them. And he said, well, they're called the Smiths. I said, well, when is the next time they're playing? So he said, oh, in about a couple of days they're playing on the Mall. I said, I don't think you... I said, are you kidding? I saw Depeche Mode the day they played. I flew over. I said, this is nothing. And I flew over, and I was so impressed. And, and one thing I did say, I would say it if Jeff kept using the words Smiths interchangeably with Morrissey, and I said, even though I'm no expert on guitars, my main focus are songs, but I could see this Johnny Marr, oh God, he was amazing. So I said to him, I said, look, let me tell you something. This is after we had, agreed to do this deal. I said, look, we can thank our lucky stars that we're signing this band, but this band has 2 stars in it, okay? So don't, only refer to them as the Smiths. If he were here, I'm sure he'd remember. And, oh my God, what a great band.
They were one of the many UK bands that you...
Oh yes, absolutely. And Echo and the Bunnymen. Yeah. I saw them in a YMCA right off the Charing Cross Road, and I made a deal with them the night that I saw them. Look, if you're a small label, I don't know if there are any label people here, but in those days there were 7 majors breathing down our necks. Now there are only 3, but they're really tough, you got to move quickly.
It meant so much to us as well. We were all very, we just started really. Didn't know much about if I was speaking for myself, know nothing about the business at all. And for an American...
You learned quick.
and the advances we got from the advances we got from people like you kept us in business. The advances you paid us kept us in business.
And the advice.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, I regard you as a mentor, as somebody, you know.
Oh, thank you. I never considered my that means I'm only going to cry. I mean, that means so much. Labels. The majors wanted nothing to do with it. I hate to tell you the things they said about it. You look at country music and the role that Sun Records played in all of that, plus in the blues too. Sam Phillips was amazing. And Starday Records to a lesser degree, and King, of course, was half country, you know, mostly R&B with James Brown and Hank Ballard and the Midnighters. Look, and where did rap start? With indie labels, okay? I mean, the majors, they don't start much. They're quick to jump on the bandwagon.
But they also supported you, or one in particular supported you for all your life, basically.
What?
Warners.
Who did?
Warners. I mean,
I think I supported them. If truth be told, read the book.
I think probably a lot of the signings that you made and brought to Warner's certainly kept them going for a while.
Madonna alone, you know, my God, you know, and also Mo Austin tried to stop me from signing Madonna. He said, "This isn't your kind of music," you know. I said, "I don't have any kinds of music." I said, "There's good music and there's bad music. When it's good, how good is it?" I said, "This girl knocked me off my feet and I was in the hospital." You know, I was off my feet to begin with. I was laying in bed. But, I mean, if I was standing up, she would have knocked me off my feet. And I was, you know, and I said, "Oh my God." You know, and I was going to be in the hospital a little bit over 2 more weeks. Luckily, I called up Amit's brother, Neswiat again, who's they both were lovely men, and I said, "Look, you know, there's this girl I want to sign. I think she's fantastic, and I don't know if she's going to be available when I get out of the hospital." And I said, "Will you sign her for me through Warner Music International and Sire? And I just want to lock her up, you know, I mean, and not throw away the key, but I wanted to lock her up, you know, because I believe that the next, I only learned, you know, when I got out of the hospital, that Chris Blackwell, who I greatly admire, had turned her down, you know. But look, we all turn down things, you know, I mean, so, and Chris Blackwell is still, to me, one of the great music men of all time, you know, and you know, where was I?
So how did you get to hear about Madonna in the first place?
Oh, well, there was this young lad that Mark Kamens, who I really believed in, and I thought he had great potential, and he said to me, "Why don't you let me produce, if you think I'm so good, why don't you let me produce one of my acts?" I said, "Look, I don't pick who produces my acts. My acts pick who their producer will be, unless I have some strong, rooted, you know, feelings that they're not the right person, you know." And I said, "I'm certainly not going to recommend that you produce one of my artists. If you want to talk to one of my artists, and that's different." I said, "But look, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll give you, over a period of the next 6 to 8 months, $18,000. That should be enough for you to do 6 demos by 6 different acts." And Madonna was either the 3rd or the 4th act that he brought me. So that's what I did.
Wow, that's
and he produced her first record. And then she went on, you know, to use other producers. But that was her choice, you know. I took care of him so that he was still involved for bringing her in.
When you look back on your career up till now, is there a particular moment or phase that you consider to have been the best?
To me, it's just, you know, it just flows by, you know. Of course, you know, it was better and easier when I was younger, you know, and you guys will find that out one day too. But you're still both very young. But the thing is, that you know, no, I love what I do.
And the energy you have still, you know, you're constantly searching.
From the waist up.
But from your ears and your, you know.
Oh yeah, well my ears are above my waist.
That's true, yeah. You know, you still have that energy. You still go around the world searching for music. You're still at every.
Absolutely. I go to India once a year because I believe, if you know what I believe in India is, they are the second most important manufacturer or producers of music. Unfortunately, most of it goes into their Bollywood films. But I've met these writers and producers, and I could tell you that because they're so well paid to write for Bollywood, that's what occupies them most of the time. These people could be, you know, finding artists and producing them, and there's great music going to come out of India. There's great music going to come out of China. Look at South Korea. Can you believe how hot South Korea is now? It's spreading to the Philippines. It's certainly, you know, Java, you know, Indonesia is got a lot of. I've heard a lot of great music come from there as well.
And you're still there searching at South Africa as well.
South Africa for sure. You know, South Africa's a great country. Look, I signed bands from Australia and had success with them. You know, from all over Scandinavia. You know, just about everywhere.
Seymour, would you like to take some questions from the audience?
If they want, you done with me, boys?
No.
We should open up and let other people ask questions.
All right.
Let's do that.
All right.
Yeah.
Who would like to
I'm
ask?
happy to take questions.
Who would like? There you go.
Could you stand up and just say it quite loud?
But you've got to have a microphone. I'm a little deaf.
Can you repeat it back for me?
Yeah, sure.
You give them a mic.
My friends and I are huge Madonna fans, and I was interested to understand. I know that obviously you signed up for two.
Louder. Your friends and I are big
Madonna fans.
And you are big Madonna
Yeah,
fans.
and I know that you initially signed her for a small deal of just two 12-inch singles.
Three
12-inch
singles.
Everybody
Yes.
ain't a big deal. And so when do you think you first realised that she was something really special?
Well, I realized she was special. When I realized how special she was I think Borderline. The single Borderline. I think that was for me the big breakthrough, and you know, and then I knew there was no looking back after that, and she proved it. But look, I have to say, you know, whoever got Madonna would have had success with her. I mean, I was the first, you know, and that's the truth. I mean, the fact that I was the first to really spot her and appreciate it, I think I deserve credit for it. There's no stopping that woman.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Someone else?
One more question.
Over here. Good, two here. One there.
Can you remember signing?
Don't you have microphones for these people?
This is rough trade.
Can you remember your UK office signing The Searchers?
Pardon?
Can you remember your UK office signing The Searchers? Your UK office signing The Searchers?
I signed The Searchers, yes. I thought they had some life in them still, and we sold a few records by them. You know.
It was a good record. It was a good album, that.
It was a good album, yes. I have no regrets.
Anyone else? There you go.
Loud.
Okay, I'll be loud. If you could give 3 tips, A&R tips, for budding A&R people, what would you say?
Well, I can only look at it from my perspective. To me, the songs are the most important thing. That's to me. Now, I don't play an instrument, so it's, I mean, look, a fool could have understood how great Johnny Marr was, but, or Eric Clapton or people like that. But to me, the song is the most important thing. And, you know, you can always become a better musician. Certainly, your live act will only get better and better, because I only look for brand new acts, and they're not that experienced. So, to me, it's the song, and the song, you know, but everything's important.
So those are 3 tips: the song, the song, the song.
Pardon?
Okay.
So how important is live in the mix?
Live?
Playing live performance. How do you?
Oh, I think it's very important. I mean, I think you've got to. It's pretty hard to not be able to go on the road and expect to be. You can have a hit record, but you can, I don't think you can have that much of a career, you know, without you know, going on the road. But you must know more about that than I do. I would think so.
Tiny.
But don't you agree?
Yeah.
So,
I
why'd you ask the question?
I asked the question because in all my working life in this business, and I've been around a few odd years, I've
And
always,
very successful.
thank you, I've always found there is a disconnect between the recording side, the publishing side, and the live side. And to be honest with you, it still kind of exists today, and therefore it's where to me the interest, and you hit it,
Talk louder,
the
please.
most important part of our whole world is the artist and the song. The song paramount.
Yes.
But thereafter, all of the bits that go with that artist to make that artist successful have to meld together. And what I've never understood in all the years I've been in this business, why there's always a disconnect and a separation.
Well,
Ask the manager's
did
wife.
you find a disconnect with me? We worked on a few things
I
together.
did, but
I mean, tell me the truth. I mean,
No, I haven't, but generally, within our business, and even so today, there is still this
I think you should address that question to Lucian Grange. You know, not to me.
I have.
I loved his brother was one of my, Lucian, I have a lot of respect for Lucian. Nigel was one of my dearest friends. I was very upset when he passed away.
I think, personally, I think you're right, but I'd ask the question slightly differently. What inspires you more, recorded music or seeing someone play live?
Oh no, I love to see them play live, but I mean, and that's how I saw most of the bands. But what I was listening for was songs, you know. I mean, you know, I mean, without mentioning some, there were some bands I saw that, you know, the performances were pretty shabby, but their songs were so great that I signed them. But I don't want to go into telling which ones they are, but I can tell you that some of them became very big. Even, you know, they get nominated to be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and things like that. So definitely.
One at the back there, Tim.
Very loud.
You've had so many hit artists. Which of the artists hasn't happened?
I can't hear
You had so many hit artists.
Which
Yes.
of the artists hasn't happened that you feel
What?
should have better recognition?
Okay, so you've had so many hit artists.
Yes.
Which artists that you work with that didn't make it, you feel should have had that recognition?
Oh, God.
God.
It's very hard. It's very hard to say. You know, you know, it's very hard. I mean, yes, I was disappointed. A few, you know, several of them didn't make it to the point that I thought they would. I mean, I remember when I found Echo and the Bunnymen, I thought they would be the biggest thing. I felt so strongly about them that I felt I need help with this band. I had just signed them, and the next day I went to see Rob Dickens, And I said, Rob, why don't you partner up with me on this band? I said, because I think that together we can really break them. And he loved them as much as I did, God bless him. And, you know, and they were pretty big, but they should have been a lot bigger.
Anyone else? Over here.
My question would be like, what do you think about...
Please talk louder. I'm a bit, you know, all this music, it's made me a bit deaf. I'm sorry.
Say it as loud as you can.
Well, come closer.
So my question would be about, like, in the streaming world, like the artists get like a really small payouts. So what do you think about the small payouts from the music industry?
In today's streaming world,
Yeah.
where the artist gets so little per play, per stream, what do you think about that?
What I think about doesn't matter, because I'm not in a position to make a decision. But I think that the artists have, you know, long time. I mean, there was a time back in the day when an artist was paid 2% royalty, and you know, this is before my time. I'm talking. This is in the days of pop music. The artists like, you know, Tony Bennett and people like that. I think the artist should be better taken care of. Yes, I do. But I'm not in a position, I never was, and at my age I certainly never will be in a position to do more for the artists.
Okay.
You know, I mean, you know, it wasn't exactly like, I mean, I had to govern my contracts by the people who were distributing me in those days, and for the past, you know, 40 years it's been Warner Brothers. Nothing against Warner Brothers. I mean, I think that Warner Brothers are probably, you know, a bit more generous than some of the others. I don't know what goes on at Universal. Or there used to be 7 majors. There's only 3 now.
Think we've got time for one more question?
Do you think the Ramones should have been a bigger band than they actually were meant to be?
Do you think the Ramones should have been a bigger band than they were?
Oh, I think there's not a person in this room that doesn't think that. What does it matter what I think? Yeah, the Ramones, it breaks my heart. The Ramones should have been so big, and they tried so hard. They were such hard workers, and they were all dead, and it's so sad, you know. So, you know, I did the best I could, and